Hey, everybody. Before we jump into today's episode, I just want to point out a few ways in which you can work with us here at How to SaaS. Number one, if you're an investor and you're in the middle of a transaction and you want to figure out what is the marketing potential of the target investment that I'm looking at, you can engage with us in a due diligence engagement where within 2 weeks, we can give you a very clear picture of all the levers within the marketing function of that organization for them to drive more revenue and pipeline for the business while being incredibly efficient. Number two, if you're the founder, CEO, operator, or investor of a company where marketing is just under leveraged and it's seen as a growth lever that requires more investment, we can come in and do a deep dive across 3 to 4 months and analyze all the opportunities within that business on the marketing side by looking at demand gen, paid media, account-based marketing, content marketing, product marketing, SEO, website, and much more, and come back with a set of recommendations and a roadmap for what marketing needs to execute against to drive more enterprise value for that business. And number three, if you're the CEO of a company that doesn't have a CMO right now, or there's a gap in the organization because the VP of marketing or CMO was recently transitioned out, we can come in a fractional CMO capacity and partner with you on that business and lead the internal team and the operational plan so that the marketing function continues to make progress and drive more pipeline and revenue. And we'll also help you hire your next CMO by being part of that hiring process and onboard that new person once they're ready to join the organization so that they get a running start. These three types of engagements are some of the most common ways in which investors, CEOs, and companies work with us. And we have a proven track record of driving a ton of enterprise value and revenue growth across those companies. To learn more, go to www.howtosas.com, where you'll get a lot more information in terms of the types of engagements I've described. And you can see case studies and other examples of the work that we've done, so you have a lot more confidence in partnering with us. And with that said, let's get to the episode. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Private Equity Value Creation Podcast, where we interview leading investors, operators, bankers, and advisors to help you answer one question: how do we increase the enterprise value of our companies? My name is Shiv Narayanan, and each episode I will dive deep with a guest to help you become a better value creator and capital allocator. So with that said, let's jump right in and let's get started with today's episode. My guest today is Riccardo Basile, and he is the operating partner and head of Permira's value creation team. And what's really interesting about this conversation is that Permira's value creation team is quite large compared to a lot of private equity firms. They have over 24 professionals, and they have a proven process to grow their portfolio companies. And I've seen a lot of PE firms experiment with this, or they have a handful of operating partners and value creation folks, but never to the size of Permira. So I wanted to have this conversation with Riccardo to talk about how do they deploy these individuals into their businesses? How does he lobby for more budget or more FTEs on his team? And what does the ratio look like when you look at how much you're spending on the ops team versus the size of the fund or assets under management? And also, what does the process look like as you're putting these folks into these companies? And how do you ensure success so that the most amount of enterprise value is being created? And Riccardo had a ton of great insights in terms of how they approach all of these things. And I think if you're thinking about your ops team or how to drive more enterprise value with a great value creation team, I think there's a lot to learn from Riccardo and the approach that they're taking at Permira. So with that said, I'll leave you to it. Enjoy the episode. All right, Riccardo, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Not bad. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm good. Excited to have you on. So why don't we start with your background and Permira, and let's take it from there.
Perfect. So my name is Riccardo Basile. I've been at Permira now just over 10 years. I am an engineer, an industrial engineer by background. I studied in Italy and abroad. Then started working for a couple of corporations across Europe, Italy, the UK, and Russia. And then Enter Consulting, did that for about 10 years, most of it with Alex Partners, driving complicated operational turnarounds. And then 10 years ago, I joined the Permira, what we call at the time, the portfolio team, which today we call the value creation team.
Got it. And walk us through the mandate of that team, because a lot of firms have value creation teams, but they come in different shapes and sizes and have different objectives. So what is the focus of your team?
So the team, maybe even a bit of history, because I think it's interesting to see how we have evolved the team over the 10 years I've been here. When I joined, there were only really 3 of us. And we had a portfolio that we had recently started deploying, our Permira 5 investment. And then we had a portfolio that was started pre-financial crisis. We had some challenges. And so our work was mostly focused on helping those challenged portfolio companies. As we fixed those problems, we were able to start pivoting on the new investments we were doing. Doc Martens, Altea, was thinking Tricor, lots of interesting investments. And we started working earlier in the diligence. So starting in diligence and then earlier in the investment. We did that for a few years and delivered very good results. That meant that the firm as a whole decided to continue investing behind the portfolio team. So from 3 individuals at a time, today we have 24. From only taking care of the issues, we're now involved from diligence, actually quite early on in diligence, all the way to the exit. And to do that, the next pivot that we did was in 2021, 2022, where we decided instead of having a single horizontal team that was covering all of our sectors, we decided to embed the team into the 4 sectors that we invest in. So maybe a little background. Permira is a mid-cap, large-cap investor, about 80 billion of invested capital, committed capital over the 40 years that we've been active. Most of it in equity. We also do some credit. I'm going to cover mostly the equity bit. That's where my team is really involved. And we are a sector-focused investor. So we cover 4 sectors: tech, consumer, services, and healthcare. But each of every one of us sits in one sector and really specializes in that sector. We want to be sector insiders in the sectors that we play. And even in consumer or in tech or in healthcare and services, we don't play across the entire sector. We really focus on certain subsegments. And so in 22, the firm was already operating that way from an investment point of view. In 22, we decided to pivot also the value creation team to that model. So today, the value creation team is specialized by sectors. That means that I have functional specialists in the sectors that we want to operate that bring true expertise above and beyond what a functional expert cross-sector can do, or clearly above and beyond what a generalist can do.
Got it. And so how big is that team compared to the size of the overall firm, and how deep are you getting involved with your investments?
So 24 individuals, 4 of them help us across sustainability. We think that is actually a horizontal capability. And then 20 of us are embedded in the 4 sectors. The biggest sectors that we have is tech, and that's where we have the most of the team, about 6 individuals. And then we go into services, consumer, and healthcare. That covers, we have about 80 portfolio companies in our equity portfolio. Of them, about 55, 57 are control deals. And that's where the team spends most of the time. We want to be able to steer the portfolio company. We want to be able to work closely with portfolio companies, and you can really do it where you have control or a meaningful minority. The way we go deep is we start working with the rest. We are investment professionals. We are part of the investment team, the way we see it at Permira. And so we start working with the rest of the investment professionals early on in the investment cycle. So when the team is starting to build the thesis for a potential investment. So we go together with the rest of the investment team through the investment committee process. We do diligence. We underwrite the value creation plan that we want to back. As an investor, Permira is a growth investor. So we only buying growing businesses, market leaders with typically very high market share. But also what we want to do is transform those businesses and make them even better. So we want the growth that we buy to continue accelerating. And so during the diligence, we build the value creation plan that then we will work with the management team to execute. Let's imagine we are successful in acquiring a business where we've been involved. We've been part of the whole journey with the management team. So it's very natural for us to start working with the management team. We don't take over from the management team. We hire great management teams. We buy great management teams. We are there to help them in typically 2 ways. One is helping them think about the transformation. We've gone through this, our average professional tenure in the team is about 17, 18 years. So we've done this for many years, and typically we've been at Permira for between 12 and 5 and 12 years. So quite a lot of experience. We've seen that a lot. So we can help the team, the management team, really think about the transformation, how to structure it, which resources they need, how to think about KPIs, how to link transformation to the performance that we want to deliver as part of the investment. And that's one area. The second area is we can bring expertise that the company cannot find. So let me give you an example. Pricing, it's a good example. What we found is that in the service sector, there are sufficient pricing experts, consultants, that can support you, and therefore we're using them a lot. We have built relationship, we have built trusted relationship with them. They consistently come and work with our services sector, both in Europe and in the US. And therefore we don't need to build that capability in-house. In pricing, in tech instead, we actually found that the capability in the market is not as strong as we'd like. And so one of the team members, Sergio, he's based in Menlo Park. He leads the tech side for the value creation team. And he's really a specialist on pricing. And so he spends 85% of his time working with our tech portfolio companies, to transform their pricing. Now, especially with GenAI, we're seeing a lot of movement from seat-based pricing for tech to consumption-based pricing. So how do we do that in a very structured and effective way? We're changing, tiering. He's an expert in thinking about how do we tier the various products that the tech companies have. And so, we really bring that expertise that our portfolio companies cannot find in the market, or we bring it for the beginning while we look for hiring the right individuals in the portfolio companies. And at the very end, we're also involved in putting together what we call the exit value creation, i.e., how do we present the opportunity for the next buyer? What are the things that if we were to own the business for longer, we would be doing? We present this typically if it's a secondary, it's another private equity that buys the business to the new potential bidders, to potential owners, and let them decide how much of that they want to back or not.
What are some of the areas that you have built the competency for internally, and what are some of the things that you're outsourcing?
So, go-to-market and commercial excellence. As I mentioned before, we are really a growth investor. We target the fastest possible growth, not the highest possible margin for our portfolio companies. And we spend a lot of time thinking about how to drive that growth. And so go-to-market is an area where there are advisors in the market, but actually is the area where we had the biggest focus in our team. I would say 2/3 of the team is really focused on commercial excellence, pricing, go-to-market. And so, but we do that with individuals that are specific to the sector. So we don't have one go-to-market expert. We have 5, one in tech, one in services, one in healthcare, and 2 in consumer, because we do brand investing in consumer and we do digital investment in consumer. And so these individuals are really, key. And I cannot find the same expertise in the advisors. Similarly, advanced analytics and GenAI. We started building an advanced analytics team in late 18, early 19, because we thought this was going to be a big wave. Today, that investment, it's definitely been proven right. And today I have 5 people working on advanced analytics, 1 in consumer, 1 in healthcare, 1 in tech, and 2 in services, because services is the area we find the biggest transformation potential of using GenAI for our portfolio companies. These are, I think, the 2 areas that we really had insourced into the team. The other one where we do a lot of the work ourselves is carve-outs. Over the past 10 years, we've done about 11 carve-outs, lots of expertise that we prefer to have in-house, so a couple of us do that. And then finally, R&D optimization for tech and our consumer digital businesses, where, helping our portfolio companies think through product prioritization, features prioritization, and then delivery optimization. It used to be, where do we put a GCC? Do we go in India? Do we go in Philippines? Do we go in Colombia? There is that, plus how do we leverage Copilot? How do we leverage technology to drive that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, walk through that piece a little bit, because you said I get it that you have a go-to-market expert in different industries and or verticals, but these people still have to get very deep with companies, right? So how do you manage that? Like, what if let's say there's a couple of companies or 5, 7 companies that need help on the go-to-market side? How does your team manage that level of volume and getting deep enough to be able to be valuable to the portfolio company?
So the key piece is they cannot spread themselves too thinly as jam. I am Italian, as I'm sure you guessed from the accent, and I always use cooking analogies. My team cannot be parsley. In Italy, you put parsley everywhere, but nobody would buy a dish because of the parsley. We cannot be parsley. We need to be focused. We need to be impactful. And so what tends to happen is that our involvement is heavier, deeper, more focused at the beginning of the investment. We really want to build that expertise in the portfolio companies. We hire pricing experts in our tech companies. We hire R&D or ops, R&D ops specialists. We hire sales ops specialists in our portfolio companies. But at the beginning, the team is very involved. We still get involved along the period, but with a lot less focused. Each of us can really only have 2, maybe 3 portfolio companies where they are working, they're working with. If you go above that number, it becomes a bit parsley, a bit jam spread very thinly. So that's the way we try to balance. There is a lot of one thing that I always find is that as a firm, we like to run the team short. I want to have more demand than there are resources in the team, so that we prioritize the highest inputs.
What about let's say you go into a company that there's generalized, let's say, commercial expertise or strategic thinking that comes from being in a space, but then there's specific expertise in functional areas of that business where go-to-market could be building out sales teams or building out cross-sell, upsell plans or pricing like we discussed or marketing efficiency. So how do you staff that with such a large team?
So to judge portfolio in a small team, I imagine.
Oh, sorry, excuse me, as a small team, yes.
So we try to be very focused. So if there is, will be a good example. Let's do actually one different SEO or search today in digital. Because of ChatGPT, because of Claude, because of the large language models and the GPTs, the use of SEO, the access that people, how people interact with the internet is changing. We have one individual, a guy called Julian. He used to be the head of SEO at Booking.com, so a very large, successful SEO player. He has spent proper R&D time thinking about how is the world changing now that we have people accessing the internet, ChatGPT, and then spending specific workshops with all our digital portfolio companies, all our portfolio companies that have a digital top of the funnel, to help them change the way they think about top of the funnel. And typically he would spend maybe a month with the portfolio companies, and then he moves to the next one, and then he moves to the next one. That way, he's able to leverage himself. I always tell to the team, the key things they need to do is build leverage for themselves, whether hiring people in the portfolio companies or bringing consultants in. At the end, we use a lot of consultants as well.
We'll get back to the show in just a moment, but before we do, one of the most common and important value creation levers that we hear about on the show from private equity investors and our own PE partners is go-to-market. Yet, when these same PE partners bring us into their portfolio companies or new target investments that they're exploring, we find that the marketing function is quite immature, underutilized, and under-optimized. And so that's a huge opportunity that we see inside these companies. And if you have a portfolio company that you feel like could scale a lot faster to drive more pipeline and revenue, or you're looking at a new investment where you feel like that could be core to your investment thesis, well, we'd love to explore that with you and figure out how we can partner with you to drive more enterprise value creation on the marketing side, similar to the way that we've done with major PE firms like TA, Updata, HG, STG, and many more. At this point, we've done hundreds of engagements across hundreds of industries and verticals, and we have a ton of benchmarks and frameworks that we bring to these engagements to help you drive as much enterprise value as quickly as possible. So if that sounds like something that you might be interested in, you can just email me directly at shiv@howtosas.com or go to our website and schedule a demo, and we'd love to speak with you about it further. And now with that said, let's get back to the show.
On our side, we do a ton of marketing consulting work with private equity groups, and that's an example of a use case where we're getting pinged a lot by PE firms saying we have companies losing a lot of search volume to these AI platforms or LLM platforms. So can you help us figure this out, because they haven't built that expertise internally? So it sounds like in those cases, the solution is that you have these internal experts, but then you're still relying on external parties as needed to kind of amplify the internal team.
Correct. And Julian or the various experts are also able to make sure that the companies find the right partner. Very often, you bring a generalist to a topic, the generalist will go and use the big four, maybe MBBs, maybe some of the more well-known companies. We go a lot deeper in terms of the advice that we use. We go to specialist digital agencies. For GenAI work, we now work directly with some of the niche players in the market instead of the large corporates.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's an interesting challenge, right? Because it's almost like you need the value creation team to act like the quarterback or the project manager of this initiative. And then there are certain things that are in their wheelhouse, and then other things they have to pull in other parties.
Correct.
For other PE firms listening, is there like a ratio that makes sense, like compared to, let's say, assets under management or the size of the fund versus the size of the value creation team? Like, how does the math shake up? Because obviously this is in many ways a value creation team is overhead, right? It's on top of the deals that you're investing in. So they have to generate alpha, but at the same time, they have to be busy enough with the number of investments that are out there to justify the cost.
So it's a topic that, I spend lots of time discussing, both internally, because I'm looking, I try to grow the team a bit, and we've grown a lot, but also with my peers in other private equities. We all know each other fairly well. We've looked at number of people per, AUMs, asset under management. We looked at the ratio investment professionals, i.e. more, investment professionals outside the portfolio team and portfolio team. The ratios are very difficult to calculate because it depends on maturity of the company. If you are, Informatica, we acquired Informatica many years ago. It was, we took it private, fairly well run business. We want to drive some transformation, but there were more point solution that we helped them with, compared to a business that maybe delivers, 30 million of EBITDA today and requires a lot of maturity, in terms of they have to grow. So we looked at ways to calculate that, and we haven't found the magic number. I think that at the moment, I feel we've got, I'm looking for a couple of individuals in specific areas. I have a couple of gaps in specific functional sector area, but I don't expect that I need a lot more than the 24 that I have today for the number of portfolio companies that we have.
Yeah, and I guess that's a great segue to just talk about the firm dynamics there, because in some ways you're there to drive value inside these companies, but you kind of have to lobby for budget to say, I need certain experts or certain value add partners or certain full-time folks, and you have to kind of get the buy-in from the firm. So talk about that process. Like, how are you going about justifying that? And I ask that because smaller firms listen to this that are not as big as Permira, but they have like one or two ops partners, sometimes maybe 5 people at most, and they likely need more resources, and they likely are not getting that support from their firm because they're hesitant to actually spend on that resource internally.
No, it's a difficult conundrum, especially for the smaller firms, as you said, Chief, is we are a cost to the GP. We're not charging our time to the portfolio companies. I think it's wrong to charge the time to the portfolio companies. I don't want to be a consultant to the portfolio companies. I am part of the GP. So we're clearly, very simplistically in the OPEX of the GP. We, at the same time, we're not measuring the individual improvement. I'm not measuring Julian on whether traffic at company X has gone from A to B, because that becomes a bit too narrow. So we are measured on the performance of the investment, every other investment professional. And the best way I know I'm adding value is where I have a lot of demand from our portfolio companies and a lot of demand from our investment teams. The biggest success at the moment, I would say the biggest KPI is we have some budget that the investment teams has, And the head of the sectors are actively giving me the budget to invest in a portfolio individual. They're taking a deal doer, and instead of hiring a deal doer, they want us as a firm to hire a value creation professional, because in their heads, they can see that the math works this way.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
Now, but if I am a mid cap or a small cap fund, it's challenging, especially if I'm not in a sector.
Yeah, I think your size kind of almost gives you these economies of scale that a smaller firm with a handful of portfolio companies can afford to expend. And then even a mid-sized firm, there's a limit to how much you can kind of hire internally in order to be able to do that.
Especially if you're cross-sector, because then you can only hire generalists. Imagine I am a deep healthcare mid-size, mid-cap private equity. Then yes, I can hire maybe one go-to-market person for healthcare and one supply chain person for expert. And that works. But if you try to cross multiple sectors, it's difficult. We can, because we're large, and therefore we have the ability to go deep in the 4 sectors and still, help each other. We do cross-fertilize the know-how across the 4 sectors.
Yeah, there's a trend right now where, a lot of LPs are talking about that they're more interested in funding firms that have more of a sector focus or verticalized focus, because it generates more outsized returns, and those firms can then build better operating teams that can help those investments grow. And then there's these like general firms that just look for mission critical companies, let's say, that have good net revenue retention, but each company is kind of different because they're in a different space. So it's hard to build a good value creation team.
I'm completely with you, Shiv.
Yeah. So talk about that piece on the fundraising side with the team as extensive as this, or being able to add value like the way you are. How much are you getting plugged into the fundraising process for Permira as one of the key people inside the firm that's driving value for all the portfolio companies?
The LPs are looking at, they're trying to understand how are we operating? What value do we bring? All the questions that you've been asking me, I tend to get them from the investors. And I meet a lot of investors. Actually, earlier on today, I had two investors meetings. But I also want the rest of the team to be, meeting the investors. The investors need to see not only me, but Sergio and Julian and Derek and Ben. I want them to be able to see the depth and prove, in the conversation, see the expertise that we can bring.
Yeah. I think that's a big piece, or like the selling point of PE firms now, because at the end of the day, like if everybody's kind of chasing similar assets, then the differentiator is really how much faster you can grow these companies. And that information needs to get back to the LPs, because they're deploying their capital in different firms, and some are just simply better at growing their portfolio companies than others.
Correct.
Yeah. So, and then on your side, like as you're kind of differentiating, because Permira obviously competes for capital, quote unquote, with other firms that also have value creation teams, right? So how do you differentiate yourself in those instances where those firms may also, like Vista or Insight and these guys, they also have large value creation teams. So what's different about Permira versus those firms?
So I would differentiate between, on the large side, the sector specialist, the Vistra, the Thoma Bravo, and the cross-sector specialist. Let's start with the latter. We started that journey of bringing the team, integrating the team into the sectors, as I mentioned, a few years ago. Some of the other cross-sector, most of the other, as far as I know, cross-sector PE funds have not started that journey, or are only now starting that journey. So I think we've been early in that movement. I speak with lots of my peers, and these conversations are very, very active in their funds as well. But we are the early mover comparing to the funds that are cross-sector. Compared to the sector, the deep sector specialist on the large scale, what I think we bring is that cross-sector expertise. So, for example, today we're looking at an opportunity to invest in a healthcare tech business. It's a software player that operates in the pharma space. We can bring, and we are bringing to the diligence, we bring into the assessment, and if we are successful, we bring to the execution of the deal. We bring in people that have the tech expertise, pricing, as I mentioned before, R&D, thinking about the tech stack. But at the same time, the end market is a pharma end market. And so Khalid, who does go-to-market for us in healthcare, is bringing his expertise. And so by combining this, Deepan, which is one of our co-CEOs, he always says that Permira is best at the edge between two sectors. And I think that the sector, specialists cannot do that because they only play in tech, they only play in industrial, they only play in consumer.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that definitely is a way to distinguish yourself. And I guess the proven track record in these spaces helps you win deals with the companies or the entrepreneurs themselves.
Exactly. If you look at our more recent investment, most of them, service and tech, consumer and tech, consumer, and we're looking at consumer and service as we speak, healthcare and tech, healthcare and services. It's really, you need to balance this deep sector expertise, but able to play at the edge when the things are a bit blurred.
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. In terms of places where you're focusing your team and growth, like AI is an area that's right now obviously accelerating and changing how PE firms are thinking about things. How is that adjusted how you're looking at your value creation team?
So AI is clearly a big topic, and we're really focusing on that. We started looking at advanced analytics in 2018, and at the same time, in 2018, we started thinking of how do we use technology to enable our service healthcare businesses. At the time, you will remember the RPAs, robotic process automation, was the big thing. And so we're pushing that a lot. So when the LLMs revolution came to fruition, we were quite quick at pivoting the people that we had advanced analytics and people that were working on process automation to focus on using AI or GenAI as a tool. So we've done that. We continue hiring in that team, as I mentioned earlier. The other things that now we are building is we are building, our internal GenAI solutions to help us as a GP, and what we're calling Permira Lab. We're building a small team of engineers that will help both first the GP to improve the way we do, business, but then resources that are available for our portfolio companies. And that is really an acceleration that we're taking in the past year. And finally, we are building an AI advisory board where we bring senior, seasoned third parties, very senior CTOs, very senior CPOs, and they will be available to all our portfolio companies to go deep and strategize about the use of AI. So because we've done all of that, so every portfolio company, even before LLMs came to market, were using some sort of machine learning or advanced analytics. That was table stake. Today, we've done a bit of a check, almost like a census for our AGM in June. About 85% of our companies actually have LLMs integrated somewhere in their live day-to-day operations, whether in the product, Zendesk, Genesys, clearly they're using bots in their customer service, their contact center software solution. They're clearly using bots, leveraging LLMs, but we have them in our services companies or our healthcare companies. So 80% are using standard LLMs, live, and about 20% today are using agentic live in their solution. Again, either in the product or in the workflows used they use by companies.
Has it changed at all how you think about staffing for your team or processes for your team in terms of how you're deploying people into portfolio companies or how they're trying to bring value as an ops team?
So we are definitely hiring more in that team. So one of the two search that I mentioned is in the US to have a person to work on GenAI or leveraging GenAI for a service portfolio. Up to the moment, the two individuals in service are both based in London. So I need somebody in. So we're definitely growing that team. And the other thing is we're looking at the value creation through GenAI more and more as a lens. So it's how do I use GenAI to really change the way the business works. This is, I would say, true across all four sectors, with maybe the biggest opportunity. I think tech, it's well advanced in that. If you think about coding and integrating GenAI or AI into the product, there is so much already ongoing. And we're definitely very happy to back that. But I think the two areas where this is most transformational, healthcare and services. And so whenever we do a service investment, whenever we do a healthcare investment, we're actually spending a lot of time thinking of, can we transform this business using technology, AI? Can this business survive if a competitor comes to disrupt it using technology or AI?
What about on the people side of the portfolio companies and transforming those? Like there's obviously, we can code better or have better developers or make them more productive. But on the people side, are you seeing opportunities to find efficiency or scale faster, or the programs that these companies are running in a world of AI?
Definitely. I think scaling is the biggest opportunity. I think that especially again in high touch companies, services and healthcare, but also some piece of consumer, one of the challenges to growth has been the availability of talent. We have a portfolio companies. It's been a great success for us called Autodomus. We have been opening centers, in Vilnius, in Cork, Vilnius, Lithuania, Cork, Ireland, in Malta, in Cyprus, now in India, now in the Philippines, because we need professionals. And after a while, you run out of talent to hire. And so now with the use of technology, we can do a lot more with the individuals that we have, and therefore scale the teams, also the companies a lot more. Scaling is the big area, I think, opportunity. The second area is really thinking differently about some of the investments where maybe the company had plateaued in their profitability. With the use of technology, we can really accelerate that. And so we are spending time on that specifically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. I know we're coming up on time here, but before we close off, Riccardo, what advice would you have for other investors that are building value creation teams like yours as a parting thought here?
So I think that if they can, it's clearly the journey that I would go through. It's really going deeper into specific, areas that are relevant for whatever their investment strategy is. And if they haven't got the ability to invest across the entire value chain of the sector they're investing in, pick the areas that are the biggest needle movers and you cannot find the talent outside. That would be one. Second one would be integrate yourself with the investment professionals, with the rest of the investment firm. I think that the most successful PEs are those that see value creation as a piece of investing, not as a nice to have or a second thought. Needs to be part of the core thesis of why they invest and where they invest.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. Actually, a lot of great value creation folks that have been on the podcast, and even just ourselves, like the best PE firms we work with, the value creation team is in there during diligence to understand what the plan will be post-close. So completely agree with that. And before we close up, Riccardo, what's the best way people can reach you if they're trying to get a hold of you or Permira?
Yeah, so they can reach me on LinkedIn. I think that's the easiest way. I tend to accept, and I'm very happy to share experiences, to share ideas. And Permira, we're a fairly global business. We go from Mello, New York, multiple places in Europe, and then Asia. Definitely, happy to share experience and a coffee. Always good to have a coffee together.
Awesome. Well, Riccardo, thanks for coming on and sharing your wisdom. And I'm sure a lot of people that are thinking about their ops teams or how to build more enterprise value for their companies will learn a lot from this. So I appreciate you doing this.
Shiv, thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Before you take off, just a few requests from our side. Number one, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Spotify or YouTube or wherever you go to listen to your podcasts. Number two, if you are in the market for due diligence services, strategy consulting, or fractional CMO services, please get in touch with us at www.howtosas.com. And third, please buy a copy of my new book, Exit Ready Marketing. It covers a ton of concepts that we take our customers through, private equity investors, B2B companies, CEOs, operating partners, and marketers. And there's a ton of great value in there that expands on my previous book, Post-Acquisition Marketing, as well. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed today's content, and we'll see you on the next episode.